next we're going to talk about brushes. I have a lot of different brushes for different things. I use acrylic, oil, and watercolor, so I have different sets of brushes for each thing. First, I'm just going to talk about the types there are before I talk about the materials that they are. So we've got a filbert brush. This is a kind of a bigger one. It's got kind of a rounded flat tip. We've got a round brush. Those are these brushes that we use for making lines and details. See, this is a big, really big round brush. This is kind of a smaller round brush. See, it's got the pointy tip. And then we've got a kind of detail brush that's got a really tiny tip. All right. Then we've got our flats and brights with the flat top. So as you can see, sorry, I'm trying to get in the camera, the flat top here. So it's different from the filbert in that it's not rounded, it's flat. We've also got the different type of flat here. You get the picture, they're flat at the top. All right. And then we've got fan brushes, right? We've got liners. Those are kind of thin like the detail brushes. I don't have any here because I don't really use them. We're not going to bother with those. As far as what kind of brush you'd want, again, that's through experimentation and trying different types. You're going to find what you like. All right, so we're going to hone in on materials of brushes. So these, I have a lot of synthetic brushes. They tend to last a little bit longer than the natural hair brushes. And I use them primarily for acrylic painting because I wash them a lot in water. So this is actually a watercolor brush, but I use it for my acrylic painting and oil paint blending. I use flat brushes, flat synthetic brushes, pretty much only to blend, but that's because it's my preference. It's not what I'm necessarily recommending for you to do. You're going to be doing your own experiments. But as you're learning, I would say definitely get at least, this is about a 1 inch, maybe a 1.5 inch width here. Brush, flat brush, so flat synthetic brush like this is great. You're going to use filberts a lot for actually applying the paint. That's what I like to use. I feel like it's easier to kind of control the flat wash like this, and then to turn it to the side and get a little bit of a line going, okay? Then we've got, and I've got so many filberts. These are my favorite brushes, the filberts, so I have a lot of them to paint with. And then I've got, I don't really use the fan brushes much, but if you want to buy one and try it, that's fine. The only thing I have against fan brushes is that they don't last very long. So once you blend something and wipe it off, maybe you'll get one more use out of it before the bristles start to spread apart like this. And then they create like hairy lines in your paintings. A lot of the times students complain about getting lines and they want it to be smooth. So that's why I recommend the more dense flat brush to blend rather than the fan brush. All right, so now we're going to talk about the anatomy of the brush. So we've got bristles, ferrule, handle. So the most important part is actually inside of here in the ferrule. So there's glue and a clamp. So it's clamped down onto the handle and it's also glued inside. These the bristles are glued inside and they're clamped, and also this is clamped and glued to the handle. You don't want the bristles to fall out. So when you're at the store and you're looking for brushes, some people really like to get the packs of brushes. Sometimes you get really good ones. Sometimes they get sheddy. So you want to be able to test the bristles by pulling them a little bit, kind of looking for the spring. Does it spring back or does it just like kind of lay flat? Those are all going to, a springy brush is going to indicate a good brush. Bristles, obviously, that don't fall out are going to be better for you because they don't end up in your painting. So look for a good clamp and kind of wiggle it, make sure the handle's not coming off the ferrule. Another material that we're going to be using, or another brush for acrylic painters, if you choose to do acrylic, is this sponge brush. Sponge brush, I like to use it for smooth application of the gloss medium when we do isolation coats. So we'll talk about that more later. But these are really cheap. They're like $1 or $2, maybe a little bit more, but not much more than $3. This is a 4-inch brush. And I recommend the larger ones, even if you're doing smaller paintings. Did we talk about the detail brush or the round brush very much? I have 3 different sizes here. This is just for small details and for, drawing texture or like, making a line or something in your brush. You wouldn't actually want to paint a big painting with a tiny brush like this. Even if you have a big round brush, I have one over here actually. Grab it. Ooh. So this brush is also considered to be a round, but it's pretty big. You know, it's kind of wide. You still wouldn't want to paint with it because it's going to create a lot of texture unless that's what you're looking for. In beginning painting, we want to start with broader brushes so that we cover more ground and just kind of get used to the process. All right, so I'm going to stop talking about brushes now and then just palette knife. So it's on here, kind of lower on your materials list, but I just want to talk about it since it's here with my brushes. So this is a metal palette knife. It's got a wooden handle, and it's kind of bent. Some of them will be straight and a little bit more springy like this. I recommend a metal palette knife just in case you're heavy-handed like myself and you end up like cracking it when you're trying to blend. So it doesn't matter, you can get a plastic one too, but I like the metal ones because they just have more longevity. This size is pretty good. It's kind of like length of a finger, I guess, my first finger. And it's kind of just as wide. It's a really good size. This is kind of the only size I use to blend. What we do is we use it to mix paint on the palette, and I will show you that later in another tutorial. But right now I'm just talking about material.